Okay, Kevin, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Sharon. I'm an alcoholic, and I like the name of your group, so I'm going to have a little bit more serenity when I leave. I'm hoping to. And welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. I think your name started with a K, and I can't remember it. I'm sorry. I'm a little verklempt at the moment, but that's okay. Nikki. Welcome, Nikki. There you are. And thank you to all the people I know on this beautiful Zoom screen that came tonight to keep me honest. that's always a good thing. There used to be a woman I didn't sponsor, but she was curious. And every time I would go anywhere around LA, I'd see her back there in the back. I'd say, "Why are you here?" And she'd say, "I just want to make sure you're telling the same story before I ask you to sponsor me." So we all have an agenda, but my agenda today is to just share my experience, strength, and hope. And thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Yeah, it's just it's another day in the now, and that's the joy of trying to stay in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous and as we know in step one, our life is unmanageable. So I definitely know I can't drink with any sort of impunity. I can't drink. I can't have one. And I know that I was definitely an alcoholic long before I knew what alcoholism was. But as I stay sober a while, I'm learning what alcoholism is. And, I'm definitely one of those people that have some tap roots that talks about in the 12 and 12. I have some tap roots that I'm discovering as I go down this path of sobriety. And thank God that they didn't say, well, 12 steps done, move on. It's like, no. And I love that I get to keep growing because I was never one to be bored, ever, ever, ever. And I used to say this, and it may be a little rude, but if you're bored, you're boring, get going, get looking, dig a little deeper, because I haven't met anybody I love in Alcoholics Anonymous or know that is perfect. And, as there's a phrase we coined, we're perfectly imperfect. And today I am trying to be just one of God's kids trying to get things done, as Johnny Harris says. And I've been lucky enough to be in the Pacific group since August 20th, 1975. And I haven't left, and I'm a runner, and I had no idea. If you would have picked me up and said, "Hey, come on, we're going to go be reborn." Hey, come on, we're going to go, we're going to go we're going to go look at every piece of you and see if we can make you a more useful human being. So as it says in the prospector, if you find the whole big mother lode of gold, there you go. You get to mine it the rest of your life, the whole mother lode. And then you get to give every piece away. It's like, what? And other little phrases in the book that my sponsor would point out, like, remember at the beginning, we agreed that it's like, I did. It's like, as it goes into the amends steps. And so it's been definitely not a boring journey, definitely finding out who I can help and finding out what I'm about and finding out that I'm just basically God's kids, one of God's kids, sitting with all of you, trying to get through the day in a way that is useful and purposeful, because if it was all me, self, I'd be in defiance. I'd be angry. I'd be moving along. I wouldn't stay in a group. I would go from one to the next. I'd find fault with everything and everybody, because that's how I became the victim in my drinking. And, I'm not a victim anymore. I know that there's a process, and I'm in another fourth step, and that's very exciting. So, you can't be 47 and a half years and be perfect. So I definitely know that. And I'm happy to be able to find more defects, more, burdens that keep me between me and God, and me and you, because you are where I connected. You are where I finally went, oh, you too. Because I was that little girl in Iowa that looked for the mothership. I'm in Iowa, for goodness sake. Why did you leave me here? I don't belong here. It's a state of pigs and corn. I want a little more dignity. I was like 6 when that started, and I hadn't had a drink yet. But I obviously, out of the 4 siblings, I was the one that was always seeking, always wanting more. My grandpa and grandma, we leave their house and I make them stop the car a block away, because they'd say, stop. And they go, why? I said, because I had to run back and hug them and kiss them one more time. because they're going to die before I see them again. I mean, I worried about things that weren't even, on most six-year-olds' repertoire. But there I was, a budding thinker, a budding thinker, a budding warrior, a budding, budding anything that wasn't kind of the norm. And it was okay because I had nature. I love nature. I find God in nature, and that works for me. And I find God in not knowing too. And I find God in listening. I'm a big listener because I have something called misophonia, which is I get to hear all kinds of things that other people don't hear that bother them. So I learned to listen and make all of that part of my meditation, my breathing, all of that. But I didn't have any tool. I had a lovely family. My dad was Czech. My mother was a beautiful mom. My mother loved me the best. I had my older sister. She was brilliant, and I was never up to her snuff. And that was okay because I've talked to her before. She's now in a dementia home for alcoholic dementia and for brain bleeds. And she's getting better from the anesthesia for the brain bleeds and the surgeries and the broken bones. But she doesn't remember the 81 countries she and her husband traveled before he died. They've been married since college days in New York City. And this is alcoholism late in life. And we didn't know. So it's a whole new thing because I'd say to her, don't you remember when she was not, in alcoholic dementia? I'd say, don't you remember when Dad would wake us up at 2 a.m. to go see the Northern Lights? And, we had to get all dressed up and it was cold. Don't you remember Dad would wait for the perfect night and he knew the Northern Lights were coming and he'd wake us up? And she'd go, no. And she was probably reading. She read every book she ever touched. And she was just that kind of girl. And she could help a lot of people, with their finances. But, I didn't take that path, but it said to me, Sharon, you're not quite enough. You're not quite enough. And my younger sister was my dad's favorite because she got the horse. And then my brother's, carries the family name, the last one to come. So I was the one that was a little bit more emotional, a little bit more busy, a little bit more had to be at every tap and took accordion lessons. And, I played the saxophone, I played the piano. And, I took ballet when I was little and I was a good tap dancer, believe it or not. But those older kids in the show said, oh, you're too young to be here. So I said, I'm too young to be there. And I didn't want to perform. So I was always maybe looking for some sort of approval. And today, that's still there. But today I want to just know that I'm close to God because my God loves me no matter what. My God wants me to have a big, beautiful life. And I've had one for a long time and I want to continue. And that's the God I have today. And being a Catholic was traditions and it was nice. But all of those things I had to rebel against to become fully into my alcoholism, not knowing that's what I was doing. So, at about 12 years old, I had the night. I had the car, John. I had a 57 Chevy. I didn't drive it, but I was sitting on the hood of it with my neighbors that let me hang out with them. And that was the night the Canadian Club came out and there was a woodsy, everybody pulled their cars up, same radio station. And I'm with older people. I'm with women that, tuck their mohair sweaters and their shorts. They're 38D, she's showing something off. And I've got a flat white t-shirt, a trainer bra, and no shoes on and cut off shorts. And I was like, oh my God, I'm sitting on the hood of this car, looking at all the football players, looking at all the popular women back in the day. And they gave me a little Canadian Club and some Schlitz beer. And I'll tell you, my trainer bra woke up and we had a great time. Life was good. And I remembered that feeling. And I guess I drove a car that night. And I guess I told jokes that night, which I'm not really a joke teller, but I won the chug-a-lug contest. Out of all those people, I'm already winning the chug-a-lug contest. I'm a gulper. I was always a gulper. So my alcoholism began and I wasn't in a lot of trouble for, I guess senior year, I started to get caught. And I went off to college because they do that. And that's what my family wanted. And I was in the art school at the University of Iowa. And, I had a fake ID for Joe's Place. It was a lot more fun. That's where I was most of the time. And had a boyfriend that, we were pinned and we were going to get married, and he was a wrestler, and he had to have a tutor. So one night I'm driving by the sorority houses, just driving, and I see him thanking the tutor under a streetlight near her sorority on the lips. And I'm going, well, wait a minute. If that's my soon to be fiance there. So I went and got a 6-pack of Schlitz malt liquor, sat outside of his apartment, and waited for the lights to go off after he went in. I just waited. I'm drinking this and I'm angry and I'm mad, and I let myself in and I jump on the bed and I'm pounding on him. And, he's a wrestler, so I'm on the floor in 1 second. And he's got me pinned and I'm spitting at him and the spit's falling in my face. I'm drunk and I'm calling him things. And he finally let me out, and I went and I got in the car and I drove to my mother's. At about 2 a.m, I woke her up and we sat at the table and I told her what had happened. And I said, I need milk and Oreos, Mother. She said, I'm drunk. And she said, aren't you going to cry? And I said, no. And it was the first time I remember shoving those feelings down so hard in me that I wasn't going to let anybody see me upset about that. Screw him. And that's kind of how I began letting King Alcohol rule my feelings. I'm letting King Alcohol start ruling my feet, my mind, my thoughts, because I had a fight with the priest and gave him the 1-finger peace sign when I left. And that's the way I left the Catholic Church, because I had him yelling at me in the confessional. So I called him a hypocrite. And there I was. I'm starting to erase things in my life. My dad came down to talk to me. He said, you're not looking very good. We brought you, Grandma sent her chicken noodle soup for you, because Grandma always made me this beautiful hangover soup. He didn't know that's what it was, because they didn't know. They didn't know what was going on with me. He said, you're thin, you need some food. What's going on with you? What's wrong with you? I hated that question. I didn't know what was wrong with me. My retort was, what's wrong with you? That began my retort. That began my alcoholism, is to keep you away. And I told my dad things that he didn't need to know. I said, sit down, Dad, I'll tell you what's wrong with me. And my dad, it hurt him because he couldn't help me some of these things that were done and gone and done to me. And I told my dad those things. And you know what? My dad and I didn't have breakfast at the same table, ride in the same car, look each other in the eye for well over 8 years, until I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. So he was hurt deeply. So I slid across the bar, just take the love of my dad. He doesn't need me and I don't need him. And he was number one, defiance. I was defiant against him. And then pretty soon I can't paint anymore. Pretty soon I have to slide across the bar. Any of the skill I had with any sort of oil paints, those days were gone. And I would get drunk at Joe's place and walk across the footbridge and be creative in art class, but the teacher didn't like it so much. I'm drunk laying on the canvas, passing out with paint on my jeans, because that was being, it was kind of, it was art. It was my art. And he said the next day, the next class, the next week I came same way, but I put paint on the other side of my jeans and I laid on the same canvas I was working on, passing out on. And he said, if you come every day, you're going to get a C, but don't do this to my class again. You're disrespectful. And I still remember his name because I had a drink at him for a while. I had to slide across the bar, my art talent. Let's just go. Whatever you need, King Alcohol, let's keep running. And I had to leave town because I just did. And I ended up in New York City, and it was so good. It was so good because we had 2-hour martini lunches at that ad agency. Every day we had Harriet Krasnowitz, God bless her, best boss I ever had. We could close our doors. We could have a hangover. It was a great place to work. And they gave me 2 weeks paid vacation and I never came back. I was having too much fun. But New York City wore me out. And I called my dad, of course. We did call. We call home, and I said, I want to go back to school, Dad. And he said, okay, but I'm not paying for the party. It's like, okay, Dad, I know, I'm serious. And that's when I found out I couldn't paint anymore. And I had to slide across the bar any sort of love I had for painting. And, it's really interesting. That is the one piece of me that I can't seem to get to. It's come out, my creativity has come out in other ways, but not painting. I've lost interest. King Alcohol took it and left town. But a lot of the things I've been able to make right. And get back in sobriety that these steps have given me. So I'm, I'm always hopeful. And, it's like when you're new, Nikki, welcome here. And I hope that, you feel a little bit at home. I know it's hard in Zoom because we need the scratch and sniff, you guys. When somebody has to develop scratch and sniff, and one side's going to be the smell of bad AA coffee, you just scratch and sniff it in Zoom. And the other side's going to be the smell of a newcomer. Yes, we need that to just make it complete. And then probably people would never get out of their chairs. But Alcoholics Anonymous welcomes you home because we're your people. Maybe you don't know that or like it, but if you connect at all, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. And my second husband, Casey, used to say that he hated being welcomed home because he was a slipper. And welcome back, Casey, welcome home. And he hated it. And he said, then he looked up a poem that Robert Frost talked about home. And he said, home is the place when you have to go there, they have to take you in. So welcome home. You're the reason we're here today. So I left home, and I left home again, and I ended up in Colorado, and near Aspen, Colorado, I met who I think was Bob Dylan, and I came to California with him. So yes, long story, but that was how I came to California, was kind of coming to it a party with an ocelot on one side and Bob Dylan on the next. That was kind of fun. And I landed in Huntington Beach at a commune where they panhandled for a living. And I'm not a good panhandler because I don't ask, I take. I'm not going to ask you for money. I might take it from you, but I'm not going to ask you. So they would come back and pick me up at that corner of Westwood by the Bank of America building, where I loved it. The Krishnas would be there, and I'd be singing and dancing with them, and they'd say, come along. Yeah, I like what you have. And then they wanted a commitment. I don't do commitment. I don't commit. I don't commit. If you want something from me, and I like, in near Aspen, there was some holy rollers. I loved their energy. When I went in there one night and they were with me, and then they wanted to dunk me, and I said, bye. I don't commit. I don't commit. My mother used to say, oh, Sharon, you're so footloose and fancy free. And yeah, I was. And my mom's still on my side, but my dad knows. My dad knows something's wrong with his daughter and he can't reach her. So I got left on Mount Baldy by these panhandlers because I drank their bong wine, because they don't drink. They just smoke stuff and drool on themselves. And they left me there, Mount Baldy. So I hitchhiked back to Colorado, hitchhiked back to Iowa, and I was sick as a dog. I didn't know I had a gallbladder that was blown. I didn't know I was on my way to pancreatitis. I was sick as a dog. And I would still go to the taverns, though, every night. And my mom was worried about me. My dad and I didn't look eye to eye. We didn't walk down the same hallway. God forbid we touched shoulders. There was so much. My mother said, you break your dad's heart, please stay out of his way. And I thought, oh, all right, gee, thanks. I'm not a member of this family anymore. Slide it across the bar. And so I, the next thing that came up was somebody said, let me take care of you. I thought, oh, maybe that would be nice for a while. I'm pretty darn tired already. I think I'm 19 and I'm tired. So taking care of me meant taking me to an organic farm in northern Wisconsin in a non-insulated schoolhouse where it gets about -10 degrees, heating with wood. We had to buzzsaw the wood. We had to chop the wood. Then we had to split the wood. And if you want tea, you gotta split some wood down in the basement, bring it up and start that wood stove and that we cooked with. And we made food in, and they were like organic, like 8 farms. And I'm with this guy who's not taking care of me, who I never liked anyway. And my mother thought maybe this will work. They bought 85 acres of land together. We know his parents. And so she gave me a lot of things that were family. And I had some of these antiques in the house, but I'm a drinker, and they just smoke pot, and maybe they sip on their little organic wines. It made me so nervous. But I would have to go get some cheap wine. And, when the snow is falling and I'm cold as heck, and I'm in that rocking chair because he's trying to play the banjo and it sounds like Big Bird or something. And it's just grating at me. And I know that we're going to have to get out those wheat berries and get the grinder and grind it into flour and make some bread. It's like so much work. And I'm reading Mother Earth news because we didn't really have anything. And there was, no internet, none of that. So I'm reading Mother Earth news because we're going to tap maple trees when it's right in the early spring. It's like, oh my God, what am I doing here? And, I was just so crazed. And they would just tell me to, at the big hootenannies, tell me to shut up and quit drinking like that. And what's wrong with you? And they make me play the spoons and sit in the corner. So I would play the spoons. And I didn't like those people. And they went off and did primal therapy. And I tended to my Maui Wowie crop I was growing back in the woods. And some sheep dung or organic sheep dung on that crop grows fast. So I had that as bartering to get out of town. And they left to go do primal therapy. Somebody got some money. And I went into town with my crop, but I forgot my crop in hefty bags back at the farm. And so there I was, embarrassed. My first big dope deal. I didn't even have the contraband. So I turned around, and there was a carnival across the street, and I saw the lights, and it looked like it was the gaiety, all of that stuff. And I walked across the street and talked to a few people. And I said, well, go talk to Matt Armstrong. He's the owner. And so they took me to Matt Armstrong. He was drinking tequila. So we sat there shot after shot after shot of tequila. And I said, I wanted a job with the carnival. And he looked at me and he said, okay, little farm girl. And he said, you do have a trailer hitch. My whole interview just rested on that final, yes, I have a trailer hitch on my car, because I had to put my shooting gallery on there and hit the road. So I called my mother from Arkansas, and she was crying. You did what? I said, come on, Mom, I'm not hurting anyone but me. Leave me alone. But I said that I had to add something to it, because she wouldn't stop crying that I had done something like that. She said, well, what about Phil? What about the farm? What about your home? It's like my mother had to go back and forth, 5-hour trip, and get everything out of there by herself. I'm not hurting anyone but me, Mom. Yeah, just the cat's out. The cat got kicked by a horse. The horse is loose. I just left town with my dog. And I said, I'm writing a book, Mother. It was like that was going to get me some clout. But what happened was the carnival didn't, I had to slide across the bar my humanity. It wasn't the ethical way I wanted to be in life. And yeah, it was a lot of stealing, a lot of craziness, a lot of hurting people. It was just a lot. It was crazy. And they hazed me, but I passed somehow because I'm drinking tequila and I have mace in my boot. So, not to mess with me, I guess. But we got closed down too many times because I argue with people. No, you didn't win. You didn't win. No, you didn't. Go away. Well, yeah, it's like 3 targets and a teddy bear. No, you only knocked down 2. And I reach over and pop that last one up they just knocked down. I'd say, go whine to your dads, kids. Leave me alone. And they would. And the dads came back and the fight started and my mace came out and we get closed down. Now, if you're a carnival owner, when you get closed down, you want to know what happened, because you got to buy off the cops and then we leave town. And I did that twice. And he said, I'm going to get that little Wisconsin girl. That little farm girl's got to go. I don't fit in with the carnival. I don't fit in with the organic people. I don't fit in with the people that are panhandling. And now I don't fit in with the carnival. So, I wasn't a nice person. And at about, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning, wherever the cheap motel was we were staying, somebody knocked at the door and I peeked, and it was Washington Parish, Bogalusa, Louisiana, took me to jail and locked me up without reading me my rights. So I was upset about that. And they just told me to shut up. And I didn't get my call and they told me to shut up. And now I'm having DTs because it's day 2. I'm starting to shake. And day 3, I don't know what's happening, but everybody's got pointed heads and the TVs are talking and there's no TVs and I'm anxious and there's no cigarettes and nobody came to give me magazines and the carnival left town. And where am I? I'm locked up in a crazy backwoods Southern jail. And the bugs are as big as, could drag my shoes across the floor at night. And it was really very scary. And eventually I found somebody making their own apple wine. They call it Pruno. But in the meantime, maybe it was about 10 days in, I was there and they handcuffed me, put me in a car. And I thought, this is it. It's over for me. They're taking me to some swamp now. But they drove to a building and opened the door and threw me in. And there were 3 men in suits. It was a bail bondsman, a judge, and a lawyer. that my dad had hired. And I looked to my left, and there was my father from Iowa standing in this building, seeing his daughter unbathed, cuts all over her face because I was crazy, and a mess, and handcuffed. And I remember sliding to the floor and thinking, I'm nothing. I'm a grease spot on your shoe. That's what I am. And I talked to my dad about that day. I made amends, of course, when I was 1 year sober, but you live like that and you hurt a lot. It takes a long time to have a discussion about a day like that. So I was 20 years sober when I had said, I think I need to talk to my dad about that. And Clancy said, because he was my sponsor, then you'll find a time. It'll work. And I miss that man every day. I had him for about 35 years out of my 45 when he passed away. I had a Janet for 5 years, Jenny for 5 years, and Clancy for 35. And he helped me through a lot of tough stuff because I need a voice louder than my head sometimes. But there I was. And, my dad and I talked about that day when I was 20 years sober, maybe 20 and a half, going on 21. And it was a perfect day. I was sitting at the end of a dock in a lake in Wisconsin reading, because my dad's a reader. And I went out and sat by him, and I sit down, and we're so smart. We say, hey, Dad, do you remember? Hey, do you remember the time when you had to get on a plane and bring your checkbook and find this place and rent a car and see your daughter looking like this? Of course, then we laughed. So it broke it, because he's got a sense of humor now, because he knows his daughter is 20 years sober. So it was okay to talk about. And what I got out of that, we got some forgiveness, which was beautiful. But I also found how I was in that situation, locked up, scared to death all the time, defiant and angry. So people left me alone. They would come in and say, she's crazy, leave her alone. And I guess that's right. And I had blood on me. I always made sure I had some blood on me somewhere. And my dad and I talked about that. And he said, it's very interesting. Actually, he didn't say I was proud of you, but he said you kept it simple, Sharon. Because every time the judge or the whatever would talk to me and ask me a question, I would say, it's not my fault. Or they'd say something that they had, or the contraband they found, and I'd say, I'm not guilty. Those are the only two retorts I had. That's as far as I could get truthful in my life. I am a victim. That's what it means. I'm a victim. And my dad left thinking they're going to take me, let me out. And he went back to Iowa, and they didn't. So I stayed there a while until they let me out. And then I found the French Quarter of New Orleans, and it was fabulous. I just went south a bit, and there it was. Every alcoholic in the world that I learned to love was right there. And so that's what I did for the next 3 years was, I made some side trips. I had a lot of blackouts. I would come to from in different states, but the last, my last 3 years of drinking, except from April to August in 75, were in and out of the French Quarter. And yeah, I love the bars. I love the bar. I love every piece of it. I love that we could stay there for 24 hours, and the bartender put my purse under the back bar so people wouldn't steal, and I could pass out and come to in these local places. And I got kicked out of 2 bars in my lifetime. One was Filthy McNasty's in Hollywood, and I don't even know what we did. I can't remember, but it's like, and I was with 2 other women, and they didn't remember what we did to get kicked out of Filthy McNasty's. And then the other place was the Bastille in the Quarter, which was a very local bar, and we painted every window black, so not an ounce of sunlight ever got in. And I walked in after my shift because I'm going to stay a while. And Billy said, you can't come in. The owner doesn't want you here anymore. And I said, I have money. I'll pay my tab. And he said, no, you're 86. I went, what? He said, look at the fan. He just pointed to the ceiling fan. And I said, yeah, so what? It's broken. He said, you broke it dancing on the bar. And I thought, oh, that's where I had that big chunk of hair taken out of my head. And he said, but that's not why he was mad. Why he was mad was, as you were getting caught up in the fan, you got kind of thrown around, and you broke the red label stuff. You broke the black label stuff. You broke all of the high end stuff. Why couldn't you just break the well whiskey? He's mad at you because you broke these beautiful bottles of high end booze. That's why he 86 me, because that's his booze. So I got 86 from there, but there you go. And, I loved you guys in the bars. We just, don't feed me gin, because I'm going to cry on your shoes. I'm going to cry on your shoes. You're going to play that song by Ray Price for the good times over and over again. And I'm going to just, so gin was like, oh, but I liked Up and Running. I liked Jack Daniel's tequila. And I never was alone. After that jail, I was never alone without alcohol. And alcohol is my running buddy. Friends come, friends go. Dogs come, dogs go. Alcoholics come, alcoholics go. Boyfriends come, boyfriends go, but not me and King Alcohol. I am in 100% with that friend. He's leading and I'm following, because he still got me somewhere inside of me that I didn't think would ever unhook. And I didn't care anymore. And that's what happened to me. So in April, it was just a bad Mardi Gras. My friend was shot and killed outside my apartment door. It was a bad Mardi Gras. I ended up in New York City, and I had to run from New York City to California and try to go to Hawaii. And I never made Hawaii, but I made Barney's Beanery of West Hollywood. Everybody knows that place, because that's where this girl Chris Running was. And she was going to be my Eskimo to you August 20th. And I met her in April. And she was drunk as a skunk, sleeping on a big book in the bar. And people, I guess, were signing our court card or something. I didn't really know what was going on. I just thought, Alcoholics Anonymous, what's that doing in here? And who is she? And then I got to know her. But so the bartender called her a taxi. She went out and fell into the taxi cab out of the 3 steps out of Barney, which we all missed numerous times and landed flat in our face. She crawled in the taxi. We gave her a toast. Go for you, Chris. Go to A&A. And that was it. I am homeless. I don't have a dog anymore. I have a book, Be Here Now, by Baba Ram Dass in my backpack. I am 170 plus pounds of bloated, alcoholic, toxic mess. I don't have a place to sleep. I've got my red dashiki and my Panama hat. It's what I wore a lot. And sometimes I'd find a hallway, and sometimes somebody feel sorry for me, and I couldn't work because I couldn't remember where drinks went, and they paid me for the night and said, please don't come back. And it was getting to be over for me. And my mom hadn't heard from me in a long time. My mom had to send my Valentine present to the bar in New Orleans where she thought I was working last, because she hadn't heard from me down in the French Quarter for a while. And she knew if I got the gift, I would call. She always sent me a Valentine present. And I remember getting that beautiful sweater. And I remember thinking, oh crap, I gotta call home. It was hard to call home. It was really hard to call home. And I never talked to my dad, and it was mostly her. And sometimes I'd hear him in the background and sometimes I wouldn't. And I'll let you know that my mother slept at night the moment I came to sit with you. She slept at night because she knew I was safe. She knew I was somewhere, maybe it was going to work for me. And my mother slept at night because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Norm Alp used to talk about I was overpaid just for that. Just that his parents would sleep at night. Overpaid. He also talked about seconds and inches. And, on August 20th, I was sitting in a bar. Cindy knows it. She took a photo of it for me. That's torn down now. It's a Duck Pond liquor store that every alcoholic knew in West LA. And I'm sitting there above the bar because I had been partying in Palm Springs and thrown out of a car and busted my jaw 3 places and my nose and had a concussion. And I found out recently when I had an MRI on my neck, because it's always kind of bothered me, that I had a broken neck too. And it was old and it healed itself. And I almost hit the deck when I saw that MRI and that X-ray. So there was a lot going on, and they left me in a ditch, and I heard a voice that said, get up, I want to live. And that's how I ended up in a hospital. That's where I ended up. And this guy came out and got me. He lived above the Duck Pond liquor store. He came all the way to Palm Springs and sat me at a table, bought me cheap wine, because my jaw is all wired up on the inside and the outside because it was a very bad break. And I had the snot kicked out of me. So I'm like in a concussion state, like, he would like just stick a straw in it, and I would stick a straw where the tooth had been kicked out and suck on this wine. And then I would pass out and I'd do it again the next day. And on August 20th, he said, you have to leave, you're depressing me. What? It's like, talk about a low day, kick me when I'm down. And I had nowhere to go, no way to make a living. I couldn't even walk out the door. And so I called my mom, Colette, and she said, Sharon, this is the only time my mother said no to me. Only time. Sharon, we can't help you anymore. Go to the Salvation Army. And I went, whoa. It's like something just reached in and grabbed my heart and had it stop beating for a minute, because she was my last resort. And I looked down and there was a phone number there, and it was the girl, Chris, running in the bar with the big book, who was dating the guy who came out to get me, because I think he told her to. She told him to. Not really sure of the story, because she died of wet brain, never made it to stay. But I called her because I thought maybe she can help me. And she said, Sharon, I can't help you, but call Suzanne. And I called a stranger. I don't do that. I don't ask for help. And Suzanne answered the phone and she said, put your drink down, put your joint down. I know exactly where you are. See, I can't talk. That was 3 months of being wired shut in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had to learn to listen. I couldn't talk my way out of anything. Plus I was bone tired. So she told me where to sit, what to do. And so I sat there with my backpack, and this car pulled up that I didn't know, these beautiful women getting out. And I immediately thought, no, I don't like you. That was immediate. My immediate thought is, no, I'm saying to the world, I don't want any help and I'm dying. But they picked me up and put me in the back, and they talked incessantly about themselves. It was a Volkswagen. I'm detoxing. I hadn't bathed in I don't know how long. I detoxed in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. The only 12-step house in West LA wouldn't take me. And I didn't care. I'm used to rejection. I don't care. Somebody gave me a floor to sleep on. But at my very first meeting, I got hooked. My very first meeting, the man standing there, I'm in a church thinking, well, I guess I'm going to have to maybe commit so I can get a bed. But he said he always waited for the spaceship to land so he could come home. And I went, oh my God, I'm with spaceship people. That literally was what I needed to hear. You could have gone through steps, being reborn, having an awakening, having a great, beautiful life. You get to help others the rest of your life. Come on. I heard spaceship people, and I looked at all of you, and I sat deeper in the seat. So we all have a hook, and that man hooked me. He hooked me beautifully. And there's a girl, Nancy, I don't know if she's on, but she's somebody I sponsor. And she said she was leaving AA. She understood that for the 5th time, going to really commit the suicide tonight. That's it. I can't do it. I'm tired of faking it. And she was leaving at the break, and she was going around the corner determined. And she heard a guy in the dark say to another guy in the dark, don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle. And it pierced her, much like the man with us talking about the spaceship. It pierced her, and she came back in and sat down, and she's got 37 years. So you don't know what your words mean. And the kindness you showed me when I came to you was unbelievable, unbelievable. And there was a man named Chuck Nesbitt who was awesome. He was like the father of the group. He's the one that would be, you could see him sitting in a chair smoking a pipe with, golden retrievers at his feet. It was just that kind of guy. And he was kind of like the father of the group. And he saw what I was doing one night. I was keeping track of every ride I got, every cigarette you gave me, every $5 you gave me, everything you gave me. And I was keeping track, and he saw me, and I can't talk still. So he didn't wait for an answer. He said, what are you doing, Sharon? He said, oh no, put that away. One day you're going to have a car, and you can give newcomers rides. You're going to have a car. And I remember, I looked back, and I remember he said, registration, license, and insurance, all in the same name. He said, I remember thinking insurance, but then he said too, you're going to be able to take that newcomer out to your car in the parking lot after the meeting, open your trunk and give her some clothes that are in a cleaner bag because you just got them cleaned for her. So she's starting a new job. And I thought, how does he know about the cleaner bags? Because his wife had done that for me when I had to go back to this court thing in Palm Springs because I caught those people. And it was just, they gave me clothes. They wouldn't let me drive alone. I drove once by myself. I had a borrowed car. You were so kind to me. And they said, don't drink and use, we'll pick you up. And then I would go from house to house to house and floor to floor to floor. And I got a sponsor and I got moved up to a couch. I was like, all right, my life got better. I get a sponsor, one for the sponsor. And my life just started with you. I was so tired. I was so broken. I had nowhere to go. And that's the joy of it. And the sponsor started me off on, sleeping on the couch in the sleeping bag. But she said, I want you to do one thing. And I thought, okay, my mother said to have manners if you're in somebody else's house. And I heard my mother say, whatever it is, you're going to do it, Sharon. And she gave me a little prayer. And she said, I want you to pray on your knees at night. This little prayer. Would you do that for me? And I said, okay. And I didn't look at it. Maybe I didn't do it right away. But eventually I did, because I didn't want God to know I was, because God doesn't shame me. I shame me. God doesn't want me to have a life that is broken and miserable and useless. I wanted me to have that. That's what I gave to King Alcohol. I had to stop drinking to even try to get a bigger God, even try to have a loving God. And I read that little prayer at 3 a.m, because Australia's having God wake them up. I made, okay, doesn't care about me in Santa Monica. And I get on my knees and I read that little prayer. And I was still wired up then, and I'd say, thanks for all you've given me. Thanks for all you've taken away from me. Thanks for all you've left me. And I would put that little note under the pillow, and then I would sleep for about 3 hours. And I started to get better. And the wires came off the face, and I got a waitress job, and I'm in the middle of this, and I'm trying. And except I don't like waiting tables. I don't like serving food. I'm a bartender, and they didn't care. I said, go get this job. So I worked at a place called Hobo Joe's. But it was right down the street from the studio group where Howard Polens and his wife, Pat, used to go. And they would come to see this poor little waif from the Pacific group who, Pat was Al-Anon. And I guess she was told, Sharon's working there. Why don't you go sit in her station and maybe give her some tips. She needs some money. I had a $24 a week room. And so they came, and they would come. And I was excited to have some AA people in the back station. And I remember a couple of times they said, how's it going? How are you? And I thought, well, I'm going to tell you how it's going, because I can. And evidently, I guess the Al-Anon said, that girl's not going to make it, because she's not supposed to do that. She's supposed to bring us hot food, not sit us down and take us hostage with her sad, sorry story. So she must have told Sally Carpenter, she was in our group with Keith. A lot of these names, these people aren't here. I just had such beautiful people around me. And Sally came up to me Saturday night. I'm in my orange uniform at the Saturday night meeting, date night, and I'm going to Hobo Joe's to work the night shift. And she came up to me and she went like this. I went, ow. And she went, that's what? She said, do that tonight. Just smile. And it looked so fake. And she said, you're not going to make any money if you don't have a better attitude. So go. And I thought, who told her? But I ended up going that night. And you know what? I'll show her. I'll prove her wrong. My defiance was still working for me in that way. I'll prove you wrong. I'll do everything you say, and I'll prove you wrong. And it's just not happened yet. Thank you. It's just not happened yet. So my tips doubled. And I thought, these people are smart. And I've learned to work. I've learned how to work. I've had a lot of different jobs, a lot of different places. And I went home at 1 year and made those amends to my dad. I finally did my inventory and finally did my 5th step. And it's like my dad and he just said, I always wanted you to be happy and nobody's eye to eye. And I go back about my life. And she said, what did he say? He always wanted me to be happy. So go be happy. Go be happy. When you go home, be happy. When you call, be happy. I thought I can do that. And then I got a sponsor named Jenny at 5 years. And my dad had walked me down the aisle at 2.5 years, came to a meeting, bought a big book, read it. And he also walked me down the aisle and we were eye to eye. Someone took a photograph. So 8 years later, we were eye to eye. And so I called my dad because I got this new sponsor. She said, you have a good job. Why don't you call your dad and see if you can pay him back the money you owe him? That part of page 78, most alcoholics owe money. Well, my dad read the big book. And I found this out after my dad was gone because my mother knows how defiant I am. And she didn't tell me until my dad was gone. She said, your dad put a calculator tape in that big book and circled the bottom line in red in case he wasn't home when you called, if you get to that part of the big book. And he was ready to go and he gave it to me. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? And it's so high. I forgot about the car that I took. So I called Jenny and she said, make payment terms. I made payment terms and he accepted. And then I told her, and she said, okay, sponsors want that one more thing. Those good sponsors, they get you in the corner. They want one more thing. So she said, are you willing to grow through this with your dad? What? Grow through this with my dad? And I said, yes, because I went out of this conversation. And she said, don't be late with the check, and don't, what I want you to do is put a note about Sharon's life. Tell him about your life. He doesn't know who you are. Tell him about your life. And don't be late with that check, because Bill and Dr. Bob are watching you. I was like, what? Lay that on me. Okay. Wasn't late with the check. My dad got the first note was about a jail panel. And then it got, a little easier to tell him something about me or my job or something. And that was 4 years and 10 months of a check and a note. And the trips home got easier. The phone calls got easier. The remembering his birthday got easier. Father's Day cards were easier to pick out. And my dad called me at 4 years and 10 months, best I can figure, after starting the check and the notes. And he said, Merry Christmas, daughter. Merry Christmas, the day after Christmas, but I don't want your money anymore. Merry Christmas. But he added what that sponsor said would maybe happen. And I didn't know she was telling me to grow through this with my dad, that maybe something would happen. He added the words, don't stop sending me your notes. And it was like, it was the best Christmas present I think I could have ever got. And, my dad was with me when they were with me when my husband left. I had a baby. My husband left me for the newcomer. Nobody got custody of the meeting. My sponsor got off the plane with 21 days from Paris instead of 21 years. I ended up at Clancy's house with my son in the little stroller, crying my eyes out because Ginny's newcomer, and Al left me. And he said, you sat right there in the fireplace. He'd always laugh when I come in. He'd point out the fireplace. He'd say, yeah, you sat right there, and cried your eyes out. When you take a breath, I said, okay, we'll try. Okay, we'll try. I was asking him to sponsor me. And we laughed about that for a long time. And he was there louder than my head when I was going to throw the hot coffee on the new couple, pregnant and married in that order. And he said, you'll walk through this with dignity and grace, Sharon. And I thought, I want revenge. I don't care about dignity and grace. But he was one of those sponsors that got in my head quickly. He said, so you can be an example to others. Oh, I don't want to hear that, because I so respect you. I so respect your example. I so respect what we have here. And so I didn't throw the hot coffee that night. And eventually he was going to leave her, number 3. And she told me that she knew she could walk through it because she had watched me. She had watched me walk through it because of her. Now, if you would have said, who gets your example, Sharon? No, it's for fun and for free, but not her. And a week ago, we were at her house with the boys, because we raised our boys together at Alcoholics Anonymous. And we had, the family there, and it was so much fun. And Pete got to come and see all the book of all that. Oh, that's what Clint looked like. And that's Vince Joe. And it was so beautiful to kind of walk down memory lane with Jill, with her. She's my good friend. And, he's with wife number 3, and it's stuck, I guess, where, he's in touch with the kids, but kind of. But I just want to let you know that, my dad got killed in 99, but he got to see my son be baptized, Grandpa Wesley, after his dad. He got to see, my son have his first communion. He got to see all that stuff with the Catholic Church, which meant a lot to him, because my son got kicked out of kindergarten. And guess what? I called Clancy sobbing, I'm a loser. I'm a loser. He's kicked out of kindergarten. He's got a page and a half of his wrongs already. So I called Clancy, and I'm crying. I'm working at this law firm, and I'm sobbing. I'm closing my door. And he said, well, take him to Sister Sheila. She's principal of a school. And I thought, I sponsor Sister Sheila. I can't take him there. And she said, take him there. So I called Sheila, and she said, we'll make room. I still sponsor that nun today. And I used to go meet her for something to eat. She'd say, just meet me in the back. And mass is just ending. Go sit in the back. And they started talking about peace and love. And I didn't know that was happening in churches, but I'll tell you, the one thing that happened for me was I can take God anywhere, because God's in my heart. And my heart has been broken open many times. And I think broken open hearts heal bigger. And my dad was killed in 99, and it was a shock. And I got off the plane, and Alcoholics Anonymous was in my mother's kitchen. And I tell this Clancy story because I love it. But I'm also going to let you know that every spring at that Catholic church, they have a carnival. I was wondering, how am I going to make amends for all those teddy bears and all that money I took? So from kindergarten through 8th grade, Sharon bought ride tickets. Kindergarten through 8th grade, whatever you need, I'll do whatever you need. kindergarten through 8th grade, the kids got, Leslie's mom buys tickets, whatever. And by the time 8th grade was over, I felt like, okay, it's done. But when my dad was at his wake, they had the wake, and of course it was a kind of a violent ending to my dad. So it was closed casket, but I couldn't talk and I didn't know what to do. So I thought, I'm going to play his accordion. I'm going to play Amazing Grace. But he's got buttons. He's checked buttons, both sides. I have a piano accordion. I don't know how to play buttons. So I'm in a closet with the girl I sponsor for 3 hours that afternoon, trying to play amazing. You get 8 notes by pulling and pushing. And I said, how's it sound? And she said, it's better. And I thought, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. So Clancy is out of town. It's raining like heck. I'm at the rectory trying to call him because the church is full. Everybody's upset. I'm upset. And now it's about me and the accordion. It's not about my dad. How self-centered can I get by being insecure and trying to be perfect instead of following my heart? And I called him and he said, Sharon, you're going to do it fine. I'm sobbing. He said, I'm so sorry I was in Africa and I couldn't be there for you. But I know you're going to do a great job. And he got me to calm down. He said, I want you to do me a favor. Look around that church when you're done, because there will be nobody with a dry eye. But I want you to do me this big favor. Look around, because there'll be about 2 or 3 people sobbing. They'll be sobbing. Look at those people, because they're the musicians. It's like, he took me right out of me, It was like, that's a sponsor, louder than your head, even when you're in pain. And I met Casey. I married Casey. We were together 24 years, married 5. And I'm glad we got married before he got sick with cancer, because, there was a lot yet to be said and done as a wife. And I don't think we had the right amount of time with all that. And he got to travel. We got to travel. And on his last days, Alcoholics Anonymous, they were there. They handled things for me. The hospice nurse was the best. He was his best friend's wife that he hadn't seen in years. That was like a fluke. And we had the room full of, we had, a Buddhist and a Catholic nun, and we had the last rites because his mother wanted that. And he did that for him. And it was beautiful and peaceful. And I got to hold my mother's hand when she left. And I've been able to use this broken open heart to let God in and to let God out more and more. And I get to sponsor beautiful women, and I get to walk with them through their pains and sit with them and sometimes just hold their hand and listen. And I know that life is tough. It used to be life is tough and then you die. And 2 years ago, I fell in love through Zoom. I didn't think I could fall in love. Casey's been gone since 2011. I'm done. And I fell in love with a man named Pete, who came and moved here after we FaceTimed for 7 months, met a couple of times. And he came out here and he has a PhD in religious studies. And guess what he's doing? Teaching 1st grade. It's beautiful. It's God puts you in the flow, and you just got to go. If you stay in the flow, it's exciting. You don't know what's going to happen next. But my life is definitely just full and beautiful, and I'm my worst enemy. I am now digging up things that have cobwebs that I'm going to have to get to, and that's okay. That's okay, because I finally have a dream. I haven't had. It's kind of your dream. I'll help you towards your dream. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm useful and purposeful. I have that. I have the steps. I have a big God. I have all of you. I've not run in 47 and a half years, but now I finally have a dream. I'm going to work towards that. And life is beautiful today. It's hard and things are sad, but I focus on what I have. What I have is these tools that I get to have. Even the 3rd step prayer is about, I don't get to just have this stuff. I get to have it to give it away, be an example. All through the book. It's not about me, but I got to get to me to help you more. I get through me, stay in the flow. I love being awake. I love seeing your eyes. I'm going to tell this little story that Casey gave me because it meant a lot. And we were sitting at a table and the wind was blowing, much like's been happening around here, crazy wind. And he said, in the morning, he said, Sharon, do you see the wind? And I went, yeah, I see it out there. It's doing all kinds of things. Things are blowing around. And it was in the morning and we were kind of quiet time. And he said, no, Sharon. And he emphasized the word see. Did you see the wind? I saw Kung Fu. This is the thing, I'm grasshopper sensei here. I better listen up, and I got it. I don't see it with my eyes. And I said, no, I don't see it with my eyes. And he said, yeah, you see the effects of the wind because you can't see the wind. I said, yeah, that's right. And he was quiet and he said, you know what? I don't see God in this cancer. I don't want to leave now. I don't want to leave you. There's unfinished business. We have things to do, but I don't want to waste this time. I have an expiration date. And he said, so I don't see God in this cancer, but I want to have a good day. So every day when I walk out the door, I walk out the door and I start looking for the effects of God. And that's where I am when I see you and I'm with you and I work with you and I walk with you and you walk with me shoulder to shoulder. Thank you for having me, Kevin. I love being with all of you tonight. God bless.